Guys, it's Chris over at Marksman Shooting Sports. I decided to compile a kind of a series of videos. We're going to be explaining and going through and answering some of the most common questions I get here at Marksman Shooting Sports by our customers. As we're approaching into the warmer months, the spring and the summer, one of the most popular things that we sell the most of during this time is concealed carry handguns, most specifically the single stack 9mm handguns. Which I have here four of our most popular, and I'm going to go through here and try and answer some of those questions that we tend to get from new shooters who are kind of entering the market, who are looking for their first handgun that's going to best suit those needs. As somebody who's going to get into concealed carry, and maybe you've just gotten your permit, and you're looking for something that's easy to carry, lightweight, yet offers a sufficient amount of defensive power that you at least feel confident with in terms of carrying. So anyway, first video I've ever done like this, so I'm just going to go through it, just impromptu, just kind of try to jog through some of these items, okay? To start with, I do have, from my right, it would be your left to right, the Glock 43 from the Glock line, the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, the Ruger LC9S, and the Springfield XDS. Now I am going to bring the camera in on some of these as I go through them. First and foremost, just picking out a gun in general. Okay, one of the best questions I get from most people is, what is the best handgun for, in the concealed carry market? What's the best handgun in the full frame market? Or what's the best target handgun out there? That's kind of a hard question to answer, and I always tell people there's really no best option, but there might be a best option for you. If there was inherently a best option, kind of that one gun that met all of those needs for everybody, well then we would only see those guns on the shelf, and that's the only gun that I would stock, as well as your local gun store would stock if you're not in this area. So that's kind of right off the bat. I always like to equate it to, say, shoes, for example, okay? When you're picking out a handgun, you want to pick out what's comfortable for you, what you are going to be able to see yourself moving in for a long period of time. You probably want to get that one handgun that's going to serve your need, so you don't have to worry about purchasing another one in the immediate future, okay? So just like shoes, there's Adidas, there's Pumas, there's New Balance. I mean, there's all sorts of different brands because everybody's foot is different. Every shoe fits somebody else differently. And then there are running shoes, and there's casual shoes and stuff like that. Same goes with handguns. What is your need? And then you got to go through, based on my need, what's going to fit me the most? What's going to fit my hand? What's going to be more natural when I point the firearm? What sight picture is best for me? What does my eye basically kind of fit into when I'm looking through the sights? What is the easiest in terms of bringing the gun up into a firing position? Which feels more natural? That's going to be way different for you than it is anybody else. So when you're looking, try not to, a lot of people like to get online and do some research, which is good, and which I recommend you do. There's going to be a lot of opinions out there, and of course the person offering that opinion is going to have a completely different hand, is going to feel more comfortable on something else. So if we're just getting down to reliability or anything like that, it's basically like the car market, okay? These things have been so fine-tuned. There's been so many models that have come out over the past century, where they pretty much, the manufacturers have honed into a science how to make a reliable, good firearm. Now there's going to be some people who agree with me that, well, maybe a Glock is reliable or it isn't, or maybe an XDS feels too gritty in your hand. Well, again, that's based on the individual person. So I'm going to bring the camera in and focus on these four firearms and kind of go through them, some of the pros, some of the cons, at least from my perspective, to help kind of answer more of those questions when my customers come in here looking at these sorts of firearms. Alright guys, so here we have a closer view of the four firearms we're going to be talking about. Again, Glock Model 43, Smith & Wesson M&P Shield, Ruger LC9S, and the Springfield XDS. Okay, so when you're looking at these, okay, the first thing to think about is price point. Okay, how much do you want to spend? And for a lot of people, that's usually kind of the end-all point, is what's the best gun I can get for the money. Well, in terms of price-wise, you're going to find these two here, the Smith & Wesson and the Ruger LC9S, kind of in the cheapest bracket, and that's going to be in the $350 to $400 range, respectively. Now, the prices might vary, and that's about where you're going to find these guys. The Glock 43 and the Springfield XDS, you're probably going to find in about the $450 to $500 range, again, respectively. So these two are going to be a little bit more expensive. These two are going to be a little bit less expensive. So when you're considering budgeting wise, if you're in that, like I said, $300 to $400 range, you might be looking more at these guys. If price isn't so much an issue when you're kind of in that $400 to $500 range, you might be looking at these. That's not to say if you have the extra money to spend, you should discount these two options, because these are still very, very, very popular. And, you know, we sell a ton of these through even people who come in and say they're not on a budget restriction at all. They still pick up the guns, they feel them out, and they say, okay, well, you know, one of these two works best for me. Or some people who might be on a tight budget that neither one of these works for them in terms of the feel and the fit, and they're going to want to try and push a few more dollars into it to get more into the XDS or the Glock 43. So I'm going to remove these and lay them down flat. Okay, the next question I get often is ease of maintenance. Okay, so how easy are they to take apart? How maintenance intensive do they need to be? How often do I need to break them down and clean them? Well, that's really up to you. What most people say is about every 500 to 1,000 rounds, you should probably break it down and clean it just to get that optimum reliability. Now, does that mean if you shoot 1,000 rounds out of the gun, you're going to have to break it down and clean it, or it's going to start jamming on you? No, most likely not. Each gun, even if I'm just looking at an XDS compared to another XDS, might be slight differences in the production, the variations. Some might go a little bit longer than others. Now, that's being a little bit specific, and I understand that, but in terms of, we're talking about concealed carry guns, you're going to be focusing on carrying one of these, and, you know, knock on wood, if I can find wood somewhere. Okay, knock on wood, you will never have to use one of these, but in that event that you have to, that's why you're trying to get into a reliable gun. You know, you don't want the gun jamming if you're in a situation where you need to depend on it. So most people recommend 500 to 1,000 yards, or 500 to 1,000 rounds, and that's going to be really in any one of these four. Some people probably say, you know, a Glock will handle more rounds than a Ruger in terms of, okay, if we're putting 3,000 to 5,000 rounds through the gun, maybe the Ruger starts showing some problems before the Glock. I'm just using that as an example. Now, there are a lot of videos on YouTube where people are actually torture testing these and running, you know, rounds, thousands and thousands of rounds for these items, basically, you know, comparing them in terms of their longevity for how long they need to go without being cleaned or parts being replaced. But by and large, you're going to see a very comparable difference here. As long as you maintain and keep the gun clean as often as possible, then you're going to be good to go in most cases. I personally, even if I take the gun to the range and put 7 rounds through it, I'm still going to break it down and clean it. I'm a little bit OCD that way, and I know a lot of people are. But if you can get out of that kind of that extra friction that's going to be built up by that extra carbon, why not just eliminate that as a potential issue down the road? If you have the time to clean it. It's also going to make you more familiar with the gun as you break it down and clean it and service it more often. Okay, so disassembling the guns. So basically, our modern firearms, handguns, will break down into 4 major components, and I'll just use the Glock as an example here. So your 4 basic components, and this is a basic field strip that I've done. Make sure that this is all on camera here. I'm actually going to flip this around so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. So your 4 basic components that you're going to see here, other than the magazine, which I'll set aside, is your slide, your barrel, your main spring, and your frame, or your lower, or your receiver. Usually in a handgun you call it a frame. Those are your 4 basic parts. All modern handguns, to most extent, are going to break down to those 4 basic components. It's true of the other 3 that I have sitting here. As you can see, when I disassembled this Glock, it was an easy process. It took me seconds to do. And maybe if it's your first handgun, you might fiddle with it a little bit. There are a lot of videos on YouTube that show more of a intense, breakdown on each one of these firearms, or really any firearm you want to look at. Just to give you an idea, it's simple. It's easy to do. Doesn't require any tools. And the breakdown is basically that easy. It might be necessary that you get such a severe jam, or maybe a fragments of a casing where you need to actually break down the gun and clean it out, it's a good thing to know how to do. But again, that would be more in severe cases. This would be your basic field strip just for cleaning and maintaining the gun. So those questions that I get, how easy is it to take apart, how easy is it to clean, well, that's basically a demonstration. It's a pretty simple process. Okay, another question I get pretty often is, I bring that in a little bit, okay. When I'm looking for a handgun, what sort of things should I be looking for? Okay, well, there's definitely some things you really want to focus on when you're looking for that handgun for yourself. The first and probably one of the most important is, and this is assuming you've picked out kind of your price range and all that stuff that we've gotten out of the way, is how does it fit in my hand? It's kind of like, picking out a car or, like I said, a pair of shoes. How does it fit? How does it feel to you? Because it's going to be different to everybody. So a Glock, this feels pretty good. Some smaller frame handguns, your pinky might fall off the bottom of the grip. Some people that bothers, some people it doesn't. But again, you're not going to realize that until you get your hands on one of these firearms and try it out for yourself. A lot of these firearms, though, will come with a pinky extension, which you see on the Ruger and on the XDS and on the Shield, to give you more of that full grip purchase. You want it to feel good. You want your hand to be up as high as it'll go, basically without bringing yourself open to slide bite. You don't want your hand so high that the slide will catch you when when it goes into recoil. Basically, you want it to feel natural. You want it to feel comfortable. You don't want to feel like you're struggling to get a nice purchase and feel on the gun. A lot of people with Glocks complain that there's the palm swell here kind of digs into your palm a little bit and it feels uncomfortable. Other people that doesn't bother. Personally, that doesn't bother me, but that just goes to show you everybody's hand is different. Everybody, it feels different to everybody. So when you're purchasing that firearm, you want to make sure, of course, that it's got a nice, good, positive feel in your hand. So it's comfortable, it's smooth, and you can see yourself being comfortable firing that firearm, when you're training or practicing, or even if you have to use it in a defensive purpose. Okay, the next thing to consider are the sights. A couple things about the sights. First of all is the sight picture. What you'll see, and we'll use the Ruger and the Glock here for two separate examples. The Ruger LC9S that I have in this hand has your traditional 3-dot sights, okay? Your Glock has a horseshoe, or some people call it a U dot. You basically see there's a U in the back here, and then of course your front sight is a dot. What sight picture do you think looks good? Which one attracts your eye more? Which one is easier for you to sight through? And I can see if I can line these up. It's kind of weird to do backwards here a little bit. You kind of see the different variation there, and it doesn't stop here. There's lots of different sight pictures or sights out there, and each one's going to be different. Case in point, we can bring the XDS out here that has a front high-vis fiber optic front sight. You see it's red, so basically what a fiber optic sight will do is it'll bring in sunlight through the front and project it through the back, making your front sight literally brighter as long as you're shooting in a well-lit area, so it's easier for your eye to focus on to sight. Okay, and again, in the back you have 2 dots, so that's kind of a 3-dot scenario with a fiber optic front sight. So maybe that's one thing. You have bad eyes, maybe you need glasses and you're like me and you just don't want to break down and get them. So having something like that that's better on your eyes could be more appealing to people, and that might be something that you really like, or maybe something you really don't like. So again, you're not going to know until you pick it up and you try and you compare these different models. Okay. Again, with sight picture, you want to see what sight picture you like the best, and you want to see which one is more natural for your eye to pick up on, because again, being able to sight through your firearm is really, really important. I think it goes without saying, and will help you in the long run in terms of accuracy. The next thing to focus on is trigger. Okay, this is probably one of the things that people do focus on a lot, is the trigger. And you've probably heard people say, with the Glock, well, the Glock's got, and I'm just paraphrasing, this isn't how I feel, the Glock's got a long, spongy trigger and it just feels awkward to me. Or, you hear this one a lot too, Smith & Wessons have kind of a gritty trigger. It almost feels like there's sand in there. Again, I don't quite feel that way, but I hear it all the time. And that just doesn't feel good to me. Again, I'm going to equate this to like a car. Some people love the ride of a sports car. They just say it's fun and smooth, or other people say, well, a sports car has horrible suspension and it's bouncy, and I don't like the ride. I like my more four-door coupe that's, a little bit more built for luxury. So everybody is different. I'm going to keep stressing that through this video. Okay, so trigger. The best thing to do is to, again, go into a gun store, or if you have friends, you can come on in here. Feel the trigger weight. Each trigger has a different weight. I think average is on a double action striker fired gun is going to be in about the 5 pound-ish range, plus or minus, maybe 5 to 6 pound range, okay? That's how many actual pounds of energy you will need to basically exert on the trigger for it to break or fire, for example. And then, of course, the reset, and that's how far the trigger needs to return forward for the firearm to reset for your next round. Again, things that you will need to feel and get in your hand when you're making your purchase. You might love the feel of the gun, but then you go to shoot it for the first time and you just hate the trigger, and you find that you're not very capable with the firearm because the trigger just doesn't suit your needs very well and doesn't fit into you. Something very important to focus on. Okay. The next thing I probably get all the time is safeties. Okay. And I get all this, people come in, and usually first-time buyers, and the first thing they say is, I need something that definitely has a safety on it. And I'm going to go a little bit on a tangent here, and there are definite advantages to having a manual safety, and we'll go into the different types of safeties because a lot of these have different types of safeties on them. But thinking a little bit outside the box, keep in mind if you're in a situation where you need to use the firearm and you're under heavy amounts of stress, maybe you're keeping this in your nightstand and you're half asleep if somebody breaks in. And these are just things people think about. You basically, and I would say you want as few barriers in the way as possible. Now, there are people who have safeties, they train, and again, training is very important, and it's basically paramount if you're going to be really efficient with your gun and efficient as a concealed carrier. The safety features, you can train by drawing from a holster and flipping off your safety to the point where it really has to become second nature, where you don't have to think about it, where it won't get in your way. Also, keep in mind, safeties are mechanical devices, and mechanical devices can fail. That's for good or for bad. That is, if your safety is off and you go to pull the trigger and there's something broken and your gun won't fire because the safety is malfunctioning, and it goes the opposite way if your safety's on and you think the safety's on and you pull the trigger, which you should never ever do. Never point your gun or pull the trigger unless you're intending to fire it. But anyway, accidentally, if you pull the trigger and you think the safety's on, it might not be, or it might be shown that it's engaged, but there's something that breaks or is malfunctioning and your gun discharges. And I always like to say this, I'm a fan of Glock. I'm just going to throw that out there. So I carry a Glock 17 when I'm in here. As many of you know, I like to know that when I have a round in the chamber and the weapon is holstered, that I know no matter what, if I pull the gun and I pull the trigger, the gun's going to fire. Now, there are what's known as trigger safeties, and actually all 4 of these have a variation of that, and that is, I'll bring this one up here, you see a little tab, trying to do this backwards here, okay, right here on the trigger, where when that's in the forward position like you see it, the gun is basically disarmed. It's blocking the gun from firing, but when I pull that forward, it now takes the gun off safety, so to speak, and I can continue pulling through and pull the trigger, okay? Those can malfunction too, and I understand that, but take it for what you will. So again, leading into that, different safety types. So you do have a trigger safety here. Then there's your traditional flip safety, which this also has, the Ruger LC9S, where you can actually flip the gun on and off safety. Remember, if you see the red means dead. So you see the red, you're on safe. I'm sorry, you see the red, you're ready to fire. You cover the red, you're on safe. Red means dead. Red means I'm good to fire. Okay? XDS, let's get into that. Has a trigger safety here, just like we saw in the Ruger. Has also a grip safety here. What does that mean? That means I have to have my hand positively on the firearm and my finger on the trigger for the gun to fire. But there's no flip safety, there's no mechanical safety. Okay? So that means if there's a round in the chamber and I leave the gun alone, the gun can't fire. But if I pick it up, grip it, put my finger on the trigger, it's ready to go. Okay? Another safety device that you see on here is a loaded chamber indicator. That basically means there's a round in the chamber, this little tab will push up, giving you a visual indication of a round in the chamber. Okay? And of course, there's not right now. that basically covers some of the basic key points of things you want to look at when you're looking into getting a concealed carry handgun. So with that being said, in a comparison of these four, I can't say one's better than the other, one's more reliable than the other, one's more accurate than the other. People are going to find their own conclusions when they test them. But what I can say is by using those strategies, getting your hands on a firearm, picking it up, handling it, testing the trigger, looking through the sights, that's how you're going to determine, well, this is the one that's best for me. And that's really, at the end of the day, what's important. Well, hopefully you guys learned something. I wasn't really trying to change any minds or throw out any opinions there. Just a little bit of some strategies you can use when you're looking into getting your first concealed carry handgun. Remember, at most gun stores, the people working there, they want to sell you a gun. They want to work with you. Us included. I get this all the time. People will come in and they'll talk to me about handguns and they'll say straight off the bat, hey, I'm not really interested in purchasing today and I feel bad. I don't want to take too much of your time. That's all crap. Talk to people who, and I won't say I know, well, specifically everything, but talk to people who at least claim to know that they know what they're talking about at least a little bit. Get some advice, get some opinions, and most importantly, get your hands on the firearms before you make the purchase so you won't regret it later. Any firearm store, whether it's us, whether it's somebody else in your area or somebody else in our area who you feel confident talking to, go in and talk to. There's really no stupid question. People like me, if people didn't come in and talk to me about guns, I would spend most of my day just staring at the wall. I'd rather be talking about firearms. Obviously, I have a huge passion for them. Whether you're a novice or an advanced person, hopefully you have a passion for them as well, or at least an interest. So we can talk, we can have fun, we can at least become friends, and get your hands on something and get you into the shooting sports, or at least get you into your second gun or your third gun or your fourth gun, or something that might be in a completely new and different realm for you. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. This is the first of hopefully many. I've just gotten so many questions. Basically, being a gun store owner, I've talked to many different people. And I get questions all the time, and I'm going to be going through those questions in this kind of series that I'm doing to help answer that and to make this kind of a tool that I can send my customers to on their downtime, if they don't have time to come in, at least get a little bit of a base of information before they come in and ultimately get their hands on the guns in person and make that ultimate decision. Thanks, guys, and let me know what else I can do a video on.